The Fairyville SVG bundle was probably one of our most popular bundles. We, to this day, keep seeing more and more posted in the official Dreaming Tree group. And we thought, well, since you guys have been asking for more, why not release some that are geared towards fall/Halloween? So this is the second one that I'm assembling from this bundle. So let's take a look at what we have here. This one is our pumpkin place little fairy house, and it's very cute. And again, it's very Halloween-y, but it's also very fall-y at the same time. So what we're going to do is we're just kind of build this in sections. Now, I already kind of started with one of the little sections here. You're going to want to find this piece. Now, you'll notice that most of these are already filled with the little vellum pieces. Just to kind of save, a minute or so, I put all the little vellum pieces, except for one, in there. So you want to get all the little vellum pieces that look like this little piece here. And all I did was just put a few little dots around the perimeter of the cutout there and just pop that right on top and just gave it a little press, okay, so that it looks like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to assemble this little piece here. So go ahead and make sure that you fold everything at the little score marks here. And we're going to assemble this little piece. And we're going to do so by taking these little tiny tabs on the side and connecting them up with the neighboring pieces. Let me zoom in on this for you so you can see it a little bit better. I want you to be able to really see this. Here we go. Okay, so you can see the tiny little tab there. And what we want to do is just begin by putting just a little tiny bit of glue on there, get it out to the edge, and then bring the next piece over and connect it to its neighbor. And just kind of give it a little squeeze to get that to stick. And we're just going to go right around in a little circle. It's a small piece. So small piece equals a tiny bit of glue equals a very, very short dry time. It should not take long for this piece and these little tabs to set, maybe a few seconds. Well, it may not completely set in a few seconds, but it will set enough to where you should feel confident in moving on to the next little tab. So just a few little dots of glue. I'm actually taking the nozzle of my glue bottle and kind of, pressing on the little area on the tab to kind of smush the glue down so it's nice and flat and thin. You don't want big globs because that takes forever to dry. And for a piece that's this small, it has more of a tendency to come apart if you use too much, okay? Now this little piece here, as we go to close this up, this may be a little tricky to get glue on this tab here. So I'm just gonna cover that with glue and also put glue on this one. So as I pop it in, that other tab is gonna be ready. And it may help to grab a little dowel to stick in there so you don't go and end up kind of destroying this thing, because it's a pretty small piece, but a little dowel and then a little pressure here should be enough to get everything in place, like so. And now, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put glue on these tabs here. I'm gonna start on the inside, and then I'm gonna do a nice little line around right up to the edge there. And I don't know if I'm gonna be able to use my finger, so I'm just kind of literally pressing the glue nozzle right up against the little tab there so that it comes out very, very thin. And actually, I can go ahead and dab that right out to the very edge there. You may want to flare these upward a little bit so that as we take this piece and pull it down, it grabs more of that surface area. And you may need to kind of nudge things in a little bit to get them to line up nicely. And that's pretty much it. So that piece is done. Give it a second to set. You could even take your dowel or anything really and just kind of pop it in there to push down on those tabs so that we have a little piece like that. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Next, what I want to work on, we may as well work on some smaller things here. This is the little top of our little house here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take these and we're just going to connect these together to form kind of like a little sloped roof. And I would say that you can go ahead and train this. I don't really think it's necessary. It is going to be curved like that, but I don't know that training is completely necessary. And I think for the sake of ensuring that everything fits nicely and correctly, I'm going to start at the bottom. So again, small area here. I'm just going to use a little bit of glue and just kind of dab that. Take the next piece, line it up so that this score mark here is nice and flush, or not flush, but lined up with the other score mark here on this neighboring piece, and then just give it a squeeze. And again, this should go rather quickly because it's a very small surface area. Okay, so I'm flipping it over, looking at it from the inside, and I'm going to put my glue on the tab from the inside so that we don't stress this piece out too much. Because heaven forbid we stress it out and then, you know, it'll have to go to like stress management school and, you know, be a therapist or something. I don't want to stress you out, little piece. And just work your way up. I put glue on the next tab up there. You can see that. And I'm just following the natural curve there, making sure that this edge is nice and aligned. Okay, if you get a little bit of glue that shoots out, not a problem. Just wipe it off. And then this little tiny little piece here, just throw a little glue on that. And that one's got a little too much. But that's okay, just wipe it off and just connect it like so. And this part is a little tedious. Anytime we deal with a shape like this, there's always going to be a lot of little connections that need to be made, but it's not that hard and it's fun. So just take your time and enjoy the process. Now we're moving on to the next one. Get our glue on the bottom there. And again, just make sure that you get everything nice and lined up. Whoops, I had my finger in the wrong place there. There we go. Kind of take a look at the top and the bottom. Make sure you've got it nicely aligned. Give it a squeeze. And again, I'm going to work my way from the inside now. Okay. Hopefully you can see that. Yep, you should be able to see it. Just look for the white area. This is the second little triangular tab from the bottom. And now I'm flipping it around so I can see what I'm doing while I'm kind of squeezing, using my thumb and my middle finger to squeeze that tab onto this piece here. And then going back to the other side, putting glue on the third tab from the bottom, flipping it around again, getting it nice and aligned, and giving it a squeeze. Okay, and last one again. It's a small one. So just a tiny little drop of glue on there. Nothing major, just enough for it to stick and hold. So I think you get the overall concept here. If you feel confident, you can go ahead and finish it at your own pace and then just kind of skip ahead. I'm going to just walk you through the entire process because there are some newbies that are maybe trying one of our projects for the first time. And for something like this, as far as a structural piece like this, I want to make sure that I'm very thorough. Okay. Now we are, as we get closer to closing this thing up, there may be a little bit of resistance and it may be a little more difficult to get your fingers in there, and that's okay, that's expected, totally normal, do your best. Not a big deal. Okay, and I think for this one here, I may just try to get these last two tabs at the same time. Again, just a tiny little bit of glue. You don't need a lot. If you put a lot on there, it's going to warp the paper, and you're going to have to sit around and wait much longer for everything to kind of set. And we don't want that. We want to kind of gain some momentum here and just get rocking and rolling. Okay, there we go. Moving on here, almost done. Let's grab our next piece, get our next tab covered with just a very thin amount of glue. Get everything nice and lined up. Make sure that that score line here matches up with that one there. Follow the natural curve of this piece here. There we go. And again, this is going to get a little more tedious here because it's so small, but I know you can do it. Do your best. I'm putting glue on all three just because it's going to be, as this thing starts to close up, it is going to be harder to get your nozzle in there. So I'm just kind of covering all three tabs after that bottom one with glue, just so I can kind of work my way up. And it should work just fine. I see that one I think went a little bit too high, but that's okay. We're human, and there's always going to be a margin of error because we're not robots. Okay, next one. And I always do the bottom one at a time because I want to make sure that everything is nice and aligned. I'm going to take my time with that one, and the rest of them kind of just fall into place. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now let's open that up. And let's get these three tabs. Come on, mister. There we go. Let's get these three tabs down. Just a little tiny, tiny little bit of glue on these remaining three tabs here. And work on connecting those pieces there. There we go. And there we go. And again, if you get a little bit of glue that leaks out, there's not much you can do about that. Just go with the flow. It's a very, very small piece, but it's going to look great in the end, so don't even worry about it. Okay, so now, all right, so now we're going to close this piece up, and I think we're going to just put glue on all four tabs, and we may need to use a little dowel to stick something in there so we can kind of push up against that tab and get everything to fit in place, because it may not be the easiest thing to do with your fingers. Actually, the bottom one should be okay with your fingers. And then I can get the second one with my finger, and I can actually get the third one with my finger as well. Get that last tab in there, and if you need to, for that last tab, use a dowel to get that connected. Okay, there we go. And it's pretty darn good. Okay, so we're going to close this shape up with this piece here. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to anchor this piece to one side only, just for starters. So just throw a little bit of glue on there. I'm going to spread that all the way out to the very edge and get that lined up nicely, like so. And give it a squeeze, make sure it's set, like that. It almost looks like a little diamond. Okay, get that out of the way for a second while we go around and put glue on the remaining tabs. And then also, again, right out to the edge here. I want to make sure that that looks nice and crisp once we put the bottom on, because that is going to be sitting on top of our little orange piece. We want everything to be nice and flush so that it sits nice and flat. And if for some reason this doesn't go on the first time, we can always go in and clean it up. So go ahead and close that up and just press down. Run your finger maybe along the edge here. And if you need to nudge one of the walls or one of the sides in a little bit, you can do so. And I'm going to put this down on my table so that I can push down all over the place here on all the sides. Okay, there we go. Now, I don't know if you can see this, you may not be able to. There's a little area here that I didn't get enough glue on. So I'm just going to go in and clean that up. And I'll show you how I do that. I do this in a lot of my videos. Just grab a scrap piece of paper and just throw a little bit of glue on one end of it. And then pick it up and just kind of tuck it under there. And kind of paint that glue on the underside, and then you can push down and give that little area some little extra TLC, some really focused and dedicated attention. And I've got another little area there. Let's see here. Let me just grab a little bit. And actually, sometimes all you need is just a tiny little bit right up at the edge, and it will do the trick. Okay. So that structure looks pretty good. Let me see here. I've got, yeah, it looks pretty good. There's going to be a pearl on top of this, so we don't really need to worry too much about the top looking like that. We're going to put a pearl on there, so we'll be all good. If you want, what we can do at this point is we can glue this piece on the bottom, because that's where this is going to go. Okay, this is like the very top of our structure. So let's just do that now. We may as well, because that ultimately is going to get glued onto the main part of the roof. I'm just going to spread that out to the very edges of this piece so that we get good coverage. Good even coverage. Okay, I'm going to flip this over, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball this and make sure that it's nice and centered. Okay, so this is the main part of the roof, and as you can see, I've already gone through and folded everything at the score mark, so except for this middle part, but that's okay. I can do that real quick. Just give it a quick fold. Get all of your tabs folded. And then one other thing that we do want to do is we want to kind of train these pieces just ever so slightly so that they begin to take on a little bit of a curve. So I'm just taking my dowel and just running it across this piece here just to kind of train it so that it kind of flares out a little bit. You don't need to do a lot of training on this, and plus it's kind of a delicate piece. So you definitely don't want to overdo it. And kind of like we did with the really small part, we're going to just connect these tabs to their neighboring pieces. And I think, well, I know that we definitely want to start at the top because it's already connected. Okay, and now we are going to be putting panels on this in just a moment. Let me get this out of the way. So again, we're just going to connect that. Make sure that you're kind of following the natural curve there and getting it overlapped, but not, you don't want to overlap it too much. You want it on top of the tab so that it's basically flush with that crease there on the next piece. You want them to be butted up against each other like that. Okay, I'm going to flip this over so I can access the tabs from the inside. Okay, let me put this down on my table, or maybe not. All right, so I'm just getting glue on my next tab here. A nice thin amount of glue, don't overdo it, because it is, when you squeeze to connect the two sides, some of it is going to try to make its way out. So it's, you don't want to overdo it on the glue. You're just going to have a giant gluey mess if you do that. All right, let's go back here onto the next tab. and get some glue right on there. There we go. Flip her over and just connect it. Make sure you're following that natural curve. Should just be nice and flush right here. All right, flip her over. And now this tab has a little half circle cutout, and it's just so that we don't obstruct the actual cutout on the neighboring panel. It's still a tab, it's just not as large because we've got that little circle cut out of it. But there we go, that's how that should look. Okay, flip her back over. Last tab here. This one's a little bit larger, and there's a nice hole in the bottom so that light can shine right on through. Okay, there we go. And that matches up nicely. Again, we started at the top here because it was already connected, so we don't have to guess where to start and where to connect it, and the bottom should seamlessly and easily line up. Okay, so we got two sides connected, and as you may have guessed, we're just going to work our way down. We're going to take this and glue it to this side here. So again, if you're confident and comfortable and understand the concept here, you can feel free to do it at your own pace and then just kind of fast forward onto the next one. So I've got my glue on the first tab, grabbing the next section, laying it over, making sure that it's nice and aligned, and then just giving it a squeeze to make sure that it holds nicely. Okay, and then moving on to the next tab. If you are feeling confident, you can most certainly maybe do 2 tabs at a time. And I think that the more assembled this is, the more confident you can get that you can do like 2 at a time. And again, as I mentioned numerous times in this video and in the previous video, if you don't use a ton of glue, you can most certainly kind of breeze through this quickly because these tabs are going to set fairly quick because there's not a lot of glue. And this paper, especially this American Craft AC cardstock, it's very porous. As you can see, it's got the nice texture, and that glue just kind of works its way into those little nooks and crannies, and it sets very quickly. So that's why, another reason, I mean, aesthetically, I think the texture is very beautiful, but it also helps make quick work of the gluing. So you can see there, we've got 3 of them done already. And we're just going to continue on here with the next one. Oops, I don't want that. It's kind of bending a little bit. That's okay though. You gotta keep this. Now let's see. Let's get glue on this first tab here. I'm gonna do the first one by itself. I don't want to try to overexert myself here with the crafting. I'll do one at a time. I'm just gonna line that up as we've done many times, and just connect that to the neighboring piece. And flip that back over, get the next few tabs ready, and you can use your glue nozzle to kind of push the tab down so you can see what you're doing, because it naturally wants to kind of pull away from your line of sight because of the we just folded it once after it was scored, and we haven't really worked the paper and haven't really loosened up those fibers in the paper to where it'll kind of float more freely or move more freely as far as the tabs go. So they kind of have a little muscle memory and they want to snap back into their original spot. So again, I'm just going down the line here and just getting everything nice and connected. Pretty straightforward. All right, so that just leaves, well, about 3 more of these we just got to do. All right, so we'll get glue on our first tab here.
and fold this over. Let's get this guy out of the way so we can still get our hand in there. That last one may be a little more difficult, and actually this one's getting a little more difficult too, but it's definitely doable. Just get that lined up, just like we did the last few times. Okay, and let's pop these tabs out, and I'm gonna do 3 tabs this time, because like I said, as this thing starts to close up, it is going to get a little more difficult to work with it. Okay, so I've got that lined up. Moving on to the next one, and just again make sure you're following that natural curve there, and everything is nice and flush and aligned. There we go. Beautiful. And the last large tab down here. Okay, so we're on the next layer here, and I'm just going to kind of fold the tabs in a little bit. And as you can see here, when this thing starts to really start coming together, it is going to be a little more difficult to get your glue in there. Just do your best. You can see I've got glue on the next 2 tabs there, and this one here, I actually probably put a little too much on there, so I'm going to wipe a little bit of that off. And just do your best. Get your hand in there however you can, and get it lined up, and then press. It's not difficult, it's just different compared to the last few that we did, because we've got some minor obstructions here that are kind of keeping your hand from getting into the correct spot, or not the correct spot, but the spot that you're used to, the configuration of your hands that you're kind of used to working with as we were putting the other ones in place. All right, so I've got those in place, and again, especially when we get towards the end here, less is more, so that you don't have to keep your hand in that weird position for too long. Okay, again, just making sure that kind of following that curve. There we go. As soon as you find it, just press it and move on. It should dry and set pretty quickly, as long as you're not using too much glue. There we go. And that just leaves me with that last tab there, the large one at the bottom. You can see it there. I'm kind of pulling it down with my thumb. Just be very gentle with the glue. Don't need too much, and if you get a little bit on there, just wipe it off with either your finger or a little paper towel or a little brush, whatever you have handy, whatever works for you. There we go. Okay, so that just leaves our last one here to kind of join this thing all together. Now it looks like I already did the top one from a previous step, but the process is exactly the same. I'm just going to do one at a time here, just so that I don't mess anything up. I've got my glue on the second tab from the top on this last piece, following that natural curve and just pressing and holding that in place. And I think I did a pretty darn good job gluing this thing together, all things considered here. Okay. So once we get this put together, you're going to have 2 options as far as the vellum goes. You can either A, put the vellum inside of this piece, or you can put the vellum on or behind the panel and sandwich it. I don't think there's really a wrong or right way to do this next step. I may for the sake of this tutorial, try one of each and see which one I think is better or easier. And then you can kind of decide which way you want to go. And it's completely up to you. Like I said, the end result is going to be the same no matter what. There may be some pros and cons to doing it one way or the other, and we'll kind of look at those and decide which one is easier and maybe more efficient as well. All right, so I've got one last tab here. And it's just this guy here. I'm going to spread my glue nice and thin. There it is, you can see the glue there. And I'm just tucking it right behind the neighboring piece and holding it down while it sets. If you have a little bit of glue that kind of sprayed out, just rub it off. It's going to dry clear. So we're going to fold these in, and we're going to take this piece here. This piece is going to go on like this, and these tabs are ultimately going to connect to the base of our little pumpkin house. So to get that in place, we're going to anchor it with one tab here to start. I'm going to do a nice thin line right up to the edge. I'm a little heavy with the glue there, but that's okay. I'm going to spread that right across, and let's get this anchored. So I'm just kind of aligning it as precisely as possible right up to the very edge. Okay, just like that. And then just kind of press it down. And it may help to actually put it down on your surface. Get it nice and centered, nice and aligned. Give it a second to get its initial hold. Okay, you can kind of stick your hand inside to push that tab into place. And if need be, you can always go in, and I can see that on one side here, that side there, I really didn't get enough glue on there. So I'm just going to take a scrap piece of paper and throw a little glue on one side of it and just paint a little bit of glue into the little piece there so that I can just push that back in place. Let me get my hand in there. And there we go. And just hold that. This is probably the most critical part of this portion of the assembly because we want to make sure that everything stays in place nicely. Okay, so just hold that in place while it sets, and I can see there that I'm kind of not doing a very good job right now. Let's spread that a little thinner and get that in there. Just push that down and hold it in place until that glue sets. There we go. Okay, and then you can put it back down on your surface and push down from the inside to really get it set. Once that one side is anchored, what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on the remaining tabs here, and then we're going to close it up. And of course, get a nice thin line right up to the very edge. I'll show you here in a second. And I'm going to spread that nice and thin right up to the very edge. There we go. There we go. Just like that. There we go. Okay. And then we just close this up. And it's a bit of a large piece, so do your best Just kind of apply that pressure and run your finger along the edge, pushing down, and then I'm kind of nudging and pushing the sides in ever so slightly, just to make sure that they line up nicely with this piece here. Okay, and again, it's a lot of area to cover really quickly. So if you do have some sides that are kind of peeling away, don't worry about it. You can always go back in and clean it up using that little method that I showed you. Okay, no one's really going to see the underside of this, but they are going to see the side here. So we want to make sure that that's nice and crisp as possible. Don't worry too much if it's not perfect, but let's do our best. There we go, that looks good. I might have one or two sides that could use a little extra TLC, but overall, I'd say that looks pretty darn good. Okay, so that's ready to go. And I'm thinking that maybe we'll put the panels on this thing after we actually get it glued down to the base, because then it'll be more structurally sound. So I'll tell you what, let's put this off to the side for a minute, and let's let it really get a good grip and a really good hold as far as the glue goes before we start messing with it anymore. Okay. All right, let's work on our little base here. And you can see here, this is the piece that we're going to start with. I've already started folding everything at the score mark, so you want to make sure you go ahead and do that. And what we're going to do, as we've done a bunch of times in previous videos for different products, and in our last video for the little haunted manor, or the haunted hollow, I forgot what it was called. We're going to take and we're going to put glue on this little triangular tab here. You can see it right there. And we're going to connect it to its neighbor. Make sure that you get that glue right out to the very edge. Okay, we're going to tuck it in. I'm going to move this large tab out of the way and just connect it right to this piece here. Make sure you get it nice and lined up, and then just give it a squeeze so that it holds. And I have some glue on my finger. Got to get that off, because sometimes the sticky finger will cause this thing to pull apart while you're trying to glue pieces together. All right, so moving right along here. Next triangular tab. Okay, let me move this top tab out of the way. Bring it in and line it up, connect it, give it a squeeze. Just make sure it lines up nicely. Okay, and you could probably give it an extra second or two to dry. I think I used very little glue, so it usually holds pretty efficiently. All right, next little tab there. Let's get that out of the way. Get that tab out of the way so it's easier to get my thumb in there. Line it up and squeeze. And be a little more patient. It kind of wants to come apart. There we go. Okay, moving right along here. And move this out of the way. Just a couple more, and our base will be mostly together here. Okay, just bringing that over, aligning it, and giving it a squeeze. There we go. All right, now this part here, actually just continue doing the same exact thing we were just doing. Just put a little glue on the triangular tab, very small amount. Bring it in, line it up, and squeeze. Perfect. All right, last one here. Now this one's already connected, so you kind of can't move it out of the way. You have to get your glue nozzle in there, which is pretty simple. Spread that glue around a bit, and line it up and squeeze. There we go. And that is going to create the base of this thing. And we just got to put a top on, and we've got a cute little lip and a little accent piece that goes around to kind of give this thing more of a little rustic look. All right, so there is the base of it. And kind of like we did with the roof portion, what we're going to do is we're going to take this large piece here and anchor it to one side for starters. Okay, nice little line right across the bottom there. Spread that out. Get it on this side too. I tend to do that a lot actually. I run my finger to spread the glue in one direction and it kind of pulls it away from the very end on the left side. I always have to go back and clean that up. So just kind of notice little quirks that you have while you're crafting so that you can avoid them in the future. And you'll end up with better results with less things to go back and fix. Okay, so I've got that nice and lined up. I'm gonna let this flap down and push down from the inside to get the rest of that glue to hold. And you can see we've got a nice clean seam there. That looks really good. And that should be pretty dry for the most part at this point. And now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna close this thing up. So glue on the tabs and then a nice little line right at the edge. So you can see here that on the inside I'm going much thicker, which allows the glue a little more time before it fully sets, which allows time for me to go and apply this thin line here and spread it thin. Because you know when you spread it thin, air gets to it a lot faster and it's thinner, so it dries faster. So we're kind of working with two different setting times here. That thicker one will take a little bit longer to set. This thin line that I'm applying is going to set much quicker. But hopefully what happens is by the time we pull that flap down, they both kind of set at the same time, which would be ideal. So there's a bit of a science to it. You're not always going to be spot on with your timing, but we can at least try. All right, so we're going to close this up. Focus your pressure right on the ends. Make sure that it's nice and lined up. If you have to nudge that wall in a little bit to line it up, do so. But it should come out pretty darn perfect, like that. There we go. Okay, and remember, it's paper. There's so many variables that can cause something to not be 100% perfect. And we're going for 95% perfection. Because I don't think it's humanly possible to be 100% accurate with the assembly on this. If you can do that, then you're a robot. So give yourself a little bit of slack when it comes to assembling these things, because you're not a robot, you're a human. Plus, you know, there's always a little bit of an inconsistency with the machine, and that is just the nature of our craft. So don't ever feel bad if things don't completely match up perfectly. You should be able to get it pretty darn close though. Like I said, probably like a 95% accuracy. Give yourself that 5% of breathing room. And if you're new to it, give yourself 20% breathing room until you kind of get the knack for everything. All right, so there is our base. Now I'm gonna flip this over and use this as my top because it's already polished and finished, okay? So next what we're gonna do is construct our little lip. And as you can see, we've got this piece here. My texture side is up like that. These little tabs are gonna be flat, so it's kind of like a valley fold like that. I'm gonna straighten this out for just a moment while I take and connect these two strips together. So you can see this side has a
little triangle there. We're going to apply our glue to that triangle. I'm going to dab it just to spread it out, and we're going to connect it to this piece here. Get it lined right up to that little score mark there. Give it an initial press, and then I'm going to fold it onto itself and just make sure that everything lines up nicely. These little tabs here should kind of mirror the other. They should be right on top of each other. You shouldn't be able to see the one behind it. And if you flip it over, the same holds true there. It should be right on top of each other perfectly, and that indicates to me and to you that you got it done perfectly. All right, so I'm going to take this, and that's where the tab is that we just glued, but I'm going to take this and put it here, and I'm going to fold this piece over like so, and there's another triangular tab. Get our glue right on there, and you could literally just put it down flat and just put this piece right on it, and that should match up pretty perfectly. Everything should lie flat and match up nicely because it's like a symmetrical piece. Each of these sides is the same length. Okay, so it should just match up nicely, and it does. All right, so now that that's all glued and made into one piece, you can kind of form it into its final shape here. I'm going to fold these tabs up a little bit to release some of that tension in the paper fibers. And we're going to take this piece here. Nope, that's not it. That's not the piece. It's this piece, sorry. This is for the structure. We're going to get rid of that. Don't want to confuse you. And we're going to pop this right over this piece here. And this is going to kind of hold everything in place. So just pop it right through like that. Okay, and we're going to take and we're going to glue these tabs to the underside of this scallop piece. And you don't need to get glue on the entire tab, just a little bit towards the back or in the center, just to get it to hold. So you can see my glue there on that tab. Okay, and I'm going to actually flatten it out and just use my table to push that down. We don't need glue all the way up to the very edge on either side. This is more or less just to kind of hold it in place. Okay, so just a little bit of glue right in the center. Pop it down on your table, push down. Bam. Okay, and just moving right along. Just, you know, this part should be pretty easy. This should go pretty quick. There we go. Just put a little more glue on that tab. The glue is kind of sandwiched in between the tab and this little scallop piece. I had a little bit of glue that just shot out there, but that's okay. It'll dry clear. No one's going to see it because the house is going to be sitting over it anyway, so not a big deal. Okay, last one. There we go. I'm using my table as much as I can. There we go. All right, so this piece is ready, and what we're going to do is we're going to glue this onto this piece like so. Okay, so it's going to create a nice little base for us, and it's got a nice little lip, so we put our little house on there with the light inside of it. It won't come falling off if you're moving it around, and it'll keep it nice and centered. So what we want to do is we're going to apply glue to this entire piece here, and we do want to focus our efforts here on getting some of this glue out to the little scallop areas here so that they don't come pulling off. So I'm just going to go around and just do a little bit of that, and somehow that glue is getting right out to the very end of the scallop there. Hopefully it doesn't leak out. I guess we'll have to see. It should be okay though. All right. So get your glue on there, get this lined up, make sure that it's nice and centered. Pardon my head for just a moment. I want to get this right. And bam. Okay, you can kind of use the center here between these two little scallops to line that up with an edge, and that applies to the entire piece here. Okay, there we go. And just run your finger across that gently to kind of help push that glue in.
And if you have a little bit that's shot out in a spot or two, not a big deal. Okay, just hold that in place, and there we go. Okay, so our lip is in place, and now there is a little, there's a little accent piece here, and I actually ran this through an embossing folder. It's a wood grain. It is also a white core paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my, let's see here, I'm going to go with my gingerbread color and just kind of hit the side of that so the white doesn't show through as much. Just like that. Kind of covers up that white and just makes it look less distracting, I guess. And actually, you know what I could do is hit the top of that too, because there's a little bit of white on the top, and I don't want to see that. All right, so what we'll do is I like to start in the middle. I'm going to get my glue in the middle here, all over. And I'm kind of use my table to kind of help me out here initially, and just line up the little corners on this piece with the corners of this piece, and then just press and get that in place like so. There we go. And you can put it down on the side that we just glued down, and choose another side and get your glue on there. Okay, and also make sure that you get the glue right out to the very edge on this. I'm just going to dab it. Okay, and go ahead and pop that over. Get it nice and centered, like that. And just kind of caress it onto the structure there. And then you can kind of continue holding it here, use the table to hold it there, and then work on the third side. Okay, so let's continue getting our glue on this piece here. And again, just make sure that you get some out to the very edge of that piece there. Okay, and just go ahead and close that up by applying it to that final side there. Just make sure you get it nice and centered, preferably flush with the top. That would be ideal. And that is half of the little accent piece. You can see how cool that looks. And what we'll do is repeat the same process on the other side. So grab the other one, find the little fold marks, fold it in half, or in thirds, I should say. And then fold the other side over. Just make sure that it lines up nicely with that center piece. And then also, again, I'm going to hit this with some brown, cover up that white. Now, if you have a wood grain embossing folder, and if you have a white core paper, sometimes, depending on your embossing machine, it may actually kind of like break the paper and show some of that white. I had to use my Sizzix Texture Boutique embossing machine for this because it does apply less pressure than a Big Shot or a Cuttlebug. So I still get the wood grain, but I don't have to worry about it tearing up my paper because it's not using as much pressure as the other embossing machines. So that is just something that you kind of pick up from trial and error. Okay, so I'm putting the first side on here, making sure that it's nice and aligned, nice and flush with the top, kind of holding the ends because that's where we need them to anchor the most. If these stay anchored, the middle is really not going to be moving too much anyway, so this should be a perfect size, and it is. Okay, so again, just like we did before, just open it up and apply glue to either side to get this finished up. Make sure that you get that glue right out to the edge, and then go ahead and get that on and just press down right at the end. Maybe just kind of run your finger across the rest of it to get it to adhere nicely. And you can see that the base is really looking pretty sharp here. It's a lot easier working with, you know, geometric shapes that are kind of flat and square and rigid. So that's why I kind of wanted to work on this first before we get into more of the actual main structure. And look at that, that meets up pretty darn perfectly there. And I see a little bit of white popping through there. I'm just gonna dab that a little bit and see if I can rub some brown on there to hide that. Just little details. You don't really have to do that. I doubt anyone's gonna notice, but I do enjoy making sure that things are as nice as possible. Okay, so there we go. Our base is all ready, and we can move on to, well, the main structure here. Okay, so we have our main structure here, and you can maybe see the difference between these two. Obviously there's a front door on this one, but what I meant was I took a dowel and just kind of trained these pieces a little bit, just to kind of give them a little bit of a curve so that they're slightly easier to work with once we start assembling. Now this is, again, this is our, this is the main structure. There's gonna be panels that go over this to make it look more round, but still would help to kind of tell the paper, hey, you're gonna be round. So let me train you a little bit to kind of get a little bit of curve on you. Okay. Ultimately, it will take on that shape because it doesn't really have a choice. Once we get these tabs in place, it's pretty much, it's where it's going to need to be. But it, like I said, doesn't hurt to kind of train them a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by gluing either the top or the bottom tabs. That's up to you, whichever one you want to do. But again, you want to make sure that you get everything nice and lined up at the top like that, and then make sure that that angle that you have there is appropriate for the rest of the tabs to kind of sit in place. So I'm going to start at the top here, and I'm going to get my glue on the first tab like that. And don't worry too much if you have a little glue that leaks out. It's not the end of the world because the panel that's going to go over this is actually pretty large. Okay, so let's get our tab in place. Just make sure that you're following the natural curve there. And just hold it and let it set. So it should kind of look like that. And then what we can do, once we have that first one in place, is just pop these other ones open from the inside. Just get a little bit of glue on there. I'm not overly concerned about getting glue out to the very, very edge. I'm just more concerned about it lining up nicely right there. Okay, now this is there's a little tiny little tab here, but you should still be able to get enough of your finger on it to get it in place and glue that down. And just hold it. Okay, we can flip it back over. This little tiny one here, I wouldn't even put glue on it. I don't think it really matters. It's so tiny. You can try, but I'm just going to focus on the next large one that's just below where they're actually still connected. I'm going to flip that back over, stick my hand through the little door here, and get that connected and in place. Yeah, you can see that little area there. Once we get this one in place, I think we can go back in and try to get that one connected. I don't, like I said, it's such a tiny little piece. It's more or less just there to prevent any light from popping out. It's not really going to make or break the project. Okay, so that just leaves these two tabs here at the bottom. So let's get our glue on these pieces here. Might as well do them both. It's pretty, I think it's pretty easy at this point. And then again, just following that natural curve. Find the best position for your hands and your fingers and just go with it. But just make sure that you get everything nice and aligned and give it a good squeeze. There we go. That looks good. That looks pretty perfect, actually. Okay, so you can kind of guess where we're going here. And I think what I'm going to do is we're going to assemble half of this and then the other half, and then we're going to put our vellum inside and then join everything together. I think that's probably going to be our best bet. Okay, so now this time around, just to show you that, you know, whatever works for you is definitely okay to do, I'm going to start at the bottom this time. This piece is already joined in the center, and that's by design to make sure that everything lines up perfectly in the end. Okay, so use that to your advantage. This thing is already aligned correctly. You just have to make sure that you get the tabs glued to each other or to the neighboring piece on the correct angle there. It should, I mean, you can see the line. You can see the line from the score line on this piece here. This piece here needs to line up with that natural curve. So when I say just make sure you're lining it up with the natural curve, that's what I'm kind of having you focus on, making sure that this piece here is lining up with the little score marks on this other piece that we're applying glue to. Okay, so I've got glue on my next tab. Again, just following that natural line there, giving it a squeeze. And it might actually be easier to work from the bottom. I don't know. Either way, whatever is comfortable for you. All right, next tab. This one's a little bit smaller, but definitely large enough to get your fingers in and give it a squeeze. And again, there's that one tiny little tab there. I wouldn't even worry about gluing it. Just kind of push it and just push it into place and just leave it. It's not doing anything structurally. So I wouldn't even waste my time. All right, moving up here, there is a tiny little tab here. Just throw a couple little dots of glue there. You can see that tiny, tiny little one. And then while I'm there, I may as well just get a little bit more, or get a little glue on this next one. There we go. And I'm gonna work like this. Get that one. I'm actually starting on the larger tab, the second tab that I just put glue on. And then once that one kind of holds, I'll go in and push that smaller one into place. Okay. And it's not following that natural curve as I insisted that everybody do. Now it is. And that looks good. Okay, perfect. So let's go back in and get glue on the last little tab here. It's a little awkward. I'm trying to hold it so that you guys can see it on camera, and sometimes it makes it a little awkward for me to hold it, but it's okay. I'll make it work. All right, there we go. All right, so these pieces are joined together. And as I mentioned, what I want to do is apply the vellum now. While the major reason we didn't put the vellum on first was because as we're shaping it and bending it, it's possible that the vellum may want to just come pulling off. And that's why I don't want to do that. You're welcome to do that if you like, or you know, if you want, what you can do is you can actually glue the vellum to the panel as well. But again, I don't really trust the vellum on the panel when we know we're gonna have to train these, and you know, it may kind of pull back and pull apart. I don't want to do that. I'm going to glue the vellum to the inside here. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that the front, and I'll just go through this real quick. Your vellum's gonna go like this on the front door. Everything is the same color there, okay? These two here are the only ones that have this kind of vellum with the little window cut out of it, because the window is actually going to be done in green. Okay, so let's get our vellum in place. I'll show you how that works. And then for this one here, we're still going to put this together. This one takes nothing but full yellow pieces like this. Okay, so let me just put these here just so that you know what's up. Okay, and let's get these moons out of here. That's for the roof. All right, let's get this glued down. And what I'm going to do is just use a series of dots all around the design. Working the perimeter first. You can do dots, you can do a line, whatever works for you. Don't overdo it. We don't want that. We don't want the glue spilling out into the cutaway areas or cutout areas. We just want enough to hold it in place. Especially now that it's curved, we know that it's going to work nicely. And just place it right in there, making sure that you're covering the little cutouts. And just give it a light push. You don't need to press down too hard. Just squeeze it a tiny little bit so that it sticks. And then you can see how that vellum is going to look. Okay, and grab our next little piece here. This is the piece with the window. So get your glue around the perimeter. No one's going to see the inside of this, remember that. So it's okay if it's a little wonky and weird. And then also right around here. Okay, and as we place this in, I'm kind of setting my gaze on the window, making sure that I keep the vellum away from that window there. And then just go around and just kind of push down in all the little areas where you've got your glue to get that to stick. And while that's drying, you can do a nice little bit of glue around the window so that we can put our green piece into place. And just push down here and there so you can see what that's going to look like. We've got a green window and we've got yellow on the rest of it. Okay, and one more time here on this side. Get our glue around the perimeter. Like so. And just pop that down. I'm looking at the window again, making sure that I'm not obstructing it because we need the green on the window. And just push down, press down. That's fine. And then again, a little bit around the perimeter of the window. And we get our window in place. Press down. Hopefully you can see that. There you go. And again, don't worry about the glue. You're not going to see that from the outside. The outside looks great. Okay, and there we go. There's our structure. So, moving on here now to the other part of the structure. Same thing that we did before. We're just going to connect all these pieces together. You can start at the top, start at the bottom, whatever you want to do. I'm going to actually start at the bottom on this one. So let's get our glue on the first tab here. And we tuck these tabs in so they don't get in the way. Okay, I'm going to hold it like this. Get it lined up nicely, flush with the bottom, follow that natural curve of the other piece, and give it a squeeze. There we go. And moving right along here. Next little tab. Got the glue on the next tab, lining it up and squeezing between my pointer and my thumb. Kind of moving back and forth to make sure that I'm getting all of that little tab there. And then I've got one small one and then that little tiny one there. Again, I would actually just leave it alone, that really tiny one. Don't even put glue on it. If it's already sticking up, that's perfect. That's what we want. Okay, get that next piece lined up nicely and squeeze. That should be big enough to get your finger on. There we go. Beautiful. That looks good. I think I'm actually doing a better job on this one than I did on the other one. Okay, so that just leaves these 3 tabs here. I'm going to try to put a little bit of glue on this small one here. It's small, but it should be big enough to actually get your finger on. And I'm going to put glue on this one right next to it too. Just like that. Let's flip it this way. Should be able to work with it like that. There we go. Actually, I'm gonna glue this larger tab down first and then revisit that tiny one there right now. There we go. That works out a little bit better because it is a tiny little tab and it helps to kind of have this piece anchored when trying to apply pressure to that smaller one, which just leaves this last one here. And just a little bit of glue. Flip it back over. Get it nice and aligned. Like that. And once you feel like you got it properly aligned, give it a good squeeze. Okay, that was super awkward the way I was holding it, but that's fine. Okay, so we're getting close there, almost there. All the pieces are kind of coming together here. So let's go back to the bottom here. Let me clean this off. This is getting ridiculous. There we go. All right, starting from the bottom. Okay. And getting that aligned, give it a good squeeze. I definitely recommend taking your time with these tabs. This is probably the most important part of the assembly. So just kind of get into a Zen mode and kind of lose yourself. I know you're probably watching me while you do this. And hopefully I'm not blabbing too much so that you can focus. But take your time with this. This is really going to make or break the project. So do your best. Just kind of get your eagle eye out. Focus on getting this lined up nicely. Be patient while the tabs dry so that this thing is nice and strong. All right, putting glue on the next tab. Again, we're at the bottom here. And just getting it nice and aligned, following that curve. Being patient while I'm squeezing, making sure that that gets a good grip. Okay, now as I mentioned, once we get to the top here, and there's that tiny little tab, again, not structurally important, just gonna prevent light from coming through. That's really why it's there. Okay, let's, up here at the top, we've got that one tiny tab that you can still work with, but it's kind of small. So just get a tiny little bit of glue on there, but glue or hold in place the one just above it first to get that anchored. And then once that's kind of partially set, you can go back down to that smaller tab and just give it a little nudge. It doesn't need much. I just did just now. I just kind of nudge that one in place. It's very small. It's gonna grab very quickly. And then finally, the last tab here. I need a little more out to the edge there. That one's gonna squirt out, I can tell, watch. And press, yep, there you go. There's a little bit of glue that just came out there, but that's okay. We are gonna put some panels on this, so you're probably not even gonna see it because the panels are almost neck and neck, like head to head. They're just buttoned up against each other very closely. So, all right, so that takes care of that structure. And again, what we're gonna do is we're gonna put our vellum in place here. So this one, there's no windows to worry about, so we're just kind of working the perimeter. Just make sure you don't get any glue near the cutouts. There we go. And just make sure that you've got it in the correct place so that all of these little cutouts have vellum on them. Okay. All right, next side here. Again, just kind of run that glue around the perimeter, and then just a little bit here and there on the inside. And again, no one's going to see the inside of this, so it's okay if our glue is a little crazy. One thing though you want to make sure you do is, or that you don't do, is don't make sure that your vellum stays within the confines of the shape, of course, and then also don't cross over the little score mark area either. Okay. All right, last one here. There we go. Just like that. Give it a little push, a little press. There we go. Okay, so our vellum's in place. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to join these pieces together to form one continuous pumpkin shape. Okay, so our vellum is in place, and we're going to join these pieces together now to create one piece. And I don't really think it matters if you start at the bottom or the top. I'm going to start at the top actually, because well, we do have to put one more piece on the top to kind of finish off the top. So it may just make most sense here. But let's start with the first little tab here to get it anchored, get it aligned nicely, and then we can move our way down. Okay, so I'm gonna get that nice and aligned. Make sure that you're following that natural curve, as I've said, and I'm gonna do it this way. And just give it a good squeeze. Make sure that you got it nice and aligned there. And hold that for a few extra seconds than you normally would, just to make sure that it doesn't budge, so that the rest of the process goes nice and smooth for us. Okay. And you know what may be a good idea too is to also maybe just glue the bottom in place as well. So let's get the top in place, and let's get the bottom in place, and it's going to involve putting our glue bottle inside the pumpkin's little cavity here, but I think it's going to make for better alignment if we do it this way. If you find a better way of doing it, or if it makes more sense to you, by all means, go with your gut. I'm just going with what I think is going to give us the best possible outcome. Okay, so I'm back on the bottom now here, and I'm just trying to make sure that this is nice and aligned here, while again following that natural curve as well. Okay, and I think that is good. So now, again, it's going to be a little trying here, but it's not horrible. Again, this thing's already pretty much connected at both ends. So what I did there, hopefully you can see it, these next two tabs here, I just kind of popped them down, and I'm going to spread my glue onto, I'm just going to do one at a time here. Okay, so I'm working on this tab here, and I'm getting that connected, wiping off any excess there. Perfect. Yeah, that's going to work out nicely, actually. Okay, let's get back in there, pull that next tab down. You can see that there. And let's get our glue on that tab. I'm just going to put a little bit on there and then use my nozzle to kind of work it around. Okay, and if you feel that you got too much in there, you can always just take your finger, wipe some of it off, then flip it back over and connect it. Line it up, give it a squeeze, bam, just like that. Okay, now if you want, I'm going to come in from this side now. Where are we? third tab's in, so I'm gonna lift up the next 2 tabs in here. You can see me doing that right there, the 2 tabs there. And let me get my glue, just popping a little dot on there and then just kind of using the nozzle to work it around. I'm gonna do the next one too. I'll flip it back over this way so you can see what you're doing. Get it nice and aligned, and then press and hold. And then go to the next one. I'll put glue on 2 of them, so I'm just kind of working my way up, following that curve. There we go. Perfect. All right, so that just leaves these last 2 here. Okay, so let's get our glue on those tabs. And again, I'm just kind of popping out a little drop of glue and then using the nozzle to kind of spread it around. Okay, so here are our last 2. Make sure you get them nice and lined up. And just press that down. Get it to stick. It might be easier this way. Sure is. Okay, so we're ready to close this piece up. And again, you can either start at the bottom or the top. Let me clean off my glue nozzle here. I don't know if it's just getting dry here in Chicago and things are just not staying as wet. Okay, so at the bottom here, at the bottom tab, and getting that nice and aligned. There we go. All right, first one's in place. I'm going to open or flip up the next 2 tabs here. And actually, I didn't hold that in place very well. And it kind of pulled away a little bit. So I'm going to go back in and with my little painting technique there and give that a little extra time to heal before I move on. There we go. That should be good now. All right, so again, you can see the next 2 tabs here. I'm going to just get my glue in from this side so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just taking a little bit of glue and popping a little bit on there and then using my nozzle to kind of work it around and spread it out, and then just kind of work my way up, making sure that I'm following that natural curve there. Give it a good squeeze. Okay, I'm going to bring it this way so you can see the next 2 tabs here. A little bit of glue. Just try to spread it out, get it out to the edge as close as you can. Again, we're more focused on getting this thing structurally sound. The tabs or not the tabs, but the panels that we're going to put on this ultimately are really going to define this piece. This is more or less just to make sure that everything is somewhat structured correctly. Okay, and now this tab here, make sure you get that nice and aligned like that. That's good. I gotta be a little more patient with that. There's a little bit of resistance here. The piece kind of wants to pull away, but you just have to spend a little extra time making sure that that glue sets before you move on. And that should be good. And that just leaves 3 more tabs here. I'm going to get glue on, I think, 2 more here, like that. There's 1. You can see that in there. There's 2. Kind of awkward, but we'll get it. There we go. Get that in place, give it a good squeeze. Next one up. Get that in place. Nice squeeze. There we go. And be patient with these last 2 pieces here. Okay. And last but not least, we got 1 tab left here, the top one. And close it up. So that time, I started at the bottom and worked my way all the way up, where the first time I did the top and the bottom and then worked my way in the center. Either way, they both work. I think maybe doing it this way actually worked a little bit better for me. So either way is fine. Okay, so there's our little pumpkin structure. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this piece here, okay, and we're gonna glue this on. So let's find the front. Where's our front door? There's our front door. I'm gonna glue that on the front here on this piece just because you're gonna be looking at that side the most, I think, and we want this to look the best. So get a little bit of glue on that tab, spread it out to the very edges, and let's get this aligned first. Nice and aligned. Let me get that in place. There we go. And then the rest of it will kind of just fall into place here. And I can tell that my right side here didn't really get enough glue. But actually, well, it did. It's still tacky. There we go. Okay. I'll put that down on my surface and just push that tab down more so it sticks. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to take and put glue on the remaining tabs here. Like so. And then, of course, nice fine line along the edge. And again, there's going to be panels on this. So if you happen to get a little extra glue that kind of hits the front of the actual structure, it's not the end of the world. It's all going to be covered up anyway. So, all right, so flare these up slightly so that as we're pulling this down, it grabs more of the surface area. And I'm going to just get this front part in place first, because that kind of helps everything else fall into place, and just kind of almost like you're making a pie crust. Just kind of run it between your fingers like that. Coming from someone that's never made a pie crust, I'm assuming that it's kind of what it's like. Actually, I take that back. I've made a pie crust before. I'm just not much of a baker. There we go. And there we go. So our top is on. Okay. All right, so structurally, we're pretty good here. And what we're going to do next is we're actually going to glue this on top here. Okay, so one other thing too is we are going to want to put some glue on this piece here so that it sits nice and flat. Okay, so I'm going to get some glue out to the very edge too here. And as long as we get that first piece in place and lined up, everything else will kind of fall into place. So throw some glue on there, okay? And then find your front door. There's my front door. Find a moon. And I had to go back in the video here, but put a little bit of glue on that tab, stick it in, okay? And then we're gonna take that tab and we're gonna glue it to the underside of the orange lip. I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. Let me just get that in place. Okay. And then push down on the rest of it to make sure that that sticks. You can actually kind of use a little dowel here to push that down if you need to. I'll show you what I just did inside. So you can see, where is it? There it is. This is the little tab that I just glued down. This one right here, you can see there's tabs here. These tabs are going to get glued down to the inside here of these pieces. Okay, so you can just go ahead, and I'm going to start on the opposite side of the one that I just worked on, right there. Putting glue on that tab, and then I'm going to fold it over and to the underside of the purple, I'm sorry, the orange piece. So we're just gluing the tab from this to the underside of the lip on the orange piece. Okay, and then moving on here, grab my next little tab. Let's see, is that lined up nicely or no? Yeah, it kind of is. Yeah, it's pretty good. Okay. Let's get our glue on the next little tab here and fold that over and just squeeze to get that next tab in place. And then just continue putting glue on the tabs here and gluing them to the underside of the orange lip. Yeah, looks good. And it's still very forgiving at this point because we're going to be putting panels on everything. So there's glue on the next tab, and I'm going to take it and just fold it over onto the underside of the orange lip. I have Baby Shark in my head, and I don't even subscribe to that craziness. I don't know why. I need to put some music on to get that out of my head. All right, last little tab there. Got the glue on it right here. And I'm gonna fold that over. I'm gonna use my fingers, I'm just showing you. You can fold that over. So there's glue on that side. We're gonna fold it over onto the inside of that little lip there. And that looks pretty darn good. Okay, now one other thing too, when you get the little tabs glued into place, if there's any area here of the roof that isn't like fully sitting down on the pumpkin, we can go in and kind of paint a little bit of glue into those areas to get it sit nicely. But honestly, I don't think anyone's really gonna notice. Structurally, we're getting there. Now we're going to kind of finish things off with the actual panels, and that's gonna make everything look really nice. So first panel here, and that's our front door. And that's gonna go on like this. Okay, so you can see what's starting to happen here. And that's looking a lot better because we're gonna be covering up any of the little imperfections from the structural assembly, and it's just gonna make it look really nice and polished. Now, I think the tip here, or the trick here, is to, well, first off, we're gonna have to take and train these panels ever so slightly. Actually, let me see if we even need to do that. I'm not sure that we do. I think that we may want to leave them alone and let it just kind of take on its own form. Yeah, I'm not even going to train these actually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue on just one side at a time. So this is the front door. I'm going to put glue just right at the top, maybe down ever so slightly. And you definitely want to make sure that that glue extends out all the way out to the very edge of the top there. Okay, maybe a little bit on the side too. And kind of butt that up and line it up with the actual pumpkin structure. Make sure that you're not obstructing any of the cutouts for the vellum. And then just press and hold that down. It may help to grab a little dowel or something to add a nice even pressure at the top. And just hold that in place until it's fully set. And I'm not going to train this. I think sometimes when I do that, if you train one piece a little bit differently than another piece, you may end up with one piece kind of, bowing out a little bit more in one area, and then it's a very inconsistent sort of look. So we want to try to avoid that. And that is perfect. That looks great. That actually lines up perfectly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to get glue on the bottom here, and I'm going to spread that out way to the bottom so that you get a nice clean finish there at the bottom. And just pull that, well, I got a little bit of glue here. Let me get rid of that. Just pull that down and just hold it in place on the bottom until it's fully set. Okay, so this is going to really start coming together here now. And we'll do the roof in just a moment. And I'm not worried about gluing that on there. It's this is enough down here and at the top to hold everything in place. Okay, so again, even if the structure, you can see here when we were putting, when I put glue on the vellum doesn't really absorb the glue very well. So you can actually see little lines of where the glue was. But luckily, because we're applying the panels, it's going to cover that all up. So it's going to look really nice once everything's said and done. Okay, so now I'm just going to work from the front to the back, and I'm going to find, make sure you find the right panel. That is obviously not the right panel because it's not following the cutouts here. This one is. Okay, and you can see what that's going to look like when we're all done getting that glued into place. It's actually pretty sharp. Okay, so start at the top here, get your glue right up to the top, and just spread that out all the way to the very edge. Okay, and let's get that lined up nicely, right up to the very top. Make sure it's centered. And you can tell it's centered because it's not obstructing any of the cutouts as far as like the vellum pieces. Okay, so do your best to get that nice and aligned up at the top and on the sides, and hold that in place while it sets. And then we're just going to do the same thing and glue the bottom down. Okay. There we go. And putting glue on the bottom of our little panel here. Spreading that glue out, making sure we're getting it out to the very bottom and the sides. Okay. And just gently folding it over, making sure that that bottom is nice and flush with the bottom of the structure, the orange structure in this case. Here's maybe a different color. And also making sure that we're not obstructing any of the cutouts for the vellum. And that looks sharp. All right. Okay. All right, moving right along. Let's find the next piece here. Just line it up and make sure that you can see all of the little vellum cutouts. Okay, and that looks nice. So we'll just put our glue right at the top. Maybe a little more. And just brush that right up to the very edge of the top there. And get that nice and aligned. And apply the pressure up at the top and just make sure that you're not obstructing any of the cutouts. That's a good indicator that you've got it positioned correctly. Okay. That's going to look nice. And then if you need to use a dowel or something to apply a little bit of pressure up at the top there, you can do so. Okay, so that looks like it's stuck. And let's get our glue to the bottom and just kind of paint that onto the bottom there. That looks good. And close it up. Or just make sure that it's nice and flush with the bottom of that main structure there. There we go. And give it a press, but don't over press it because you may kind of dent or warp the paper. We don't want to do that. Okay, so I think you guys kind of get the idea here. Okay, so moving right along here, we're going to grab this piece to the left of the door and get that in place. Just make sure you have the right one. Make sure that you can tell by the cutouts not obstructing the little vellum sections. Okay, and let's get our glue right up to the top. And then I'm going to just spread that right out to the very edge so that the top of it doesn't come pulling off. And get that nice and aligned. Nice and centered. Just make sure that, again, the best way to know that you've got it is because the little vellum pieces are still showing through nicely, and that looks perfect. So just apply some pressure up at the top there. Make sure that that sticks nicely. And it's holding pretty quickly, which is good. Okay, let's get our glue on the bottom here. And just spread that out, right out to the edge. Maybe a little bit on the side there. Okay, and just let me get rid of that glue there. Just grab that and press that down. Make sure that it's nice and flush with the orange base. And just a very gentle pressure there at the bottom. Don't want to warp the paper. Okay, so that is looking good. And just moving right along here, we've got a couple more pieces. And I'm gonna just grab some glue, put it right up at the top, just spread it out to the very edge. Okay, and get that nice and aligned. Right up to the top of the structure there. Make sure it's nice and centered, nice and even. And just press that down. And as you're holding that down, just kind of wrap it around. Make sure that none of the little vellum areas are being obstructed. And just hold until that sets. And that looks like it's pretty much done. And again, grab your glue for the bottom, spread that out nice and thin, all the way to the bottom. and just wrap it. There we go. And give it a little squeeze at the bottom there. There we go. Okay. So there you can see how that's starting to look. Everything is nice and tight and flush. It looks good. And that just leaves the back here. Make sure that you've got the orientation correct. Does not go like that. You want the 2 stars up at the top. So let's get that in place. And then once the panels are on, we can go ahead and decorate and get the little windows in place and all that fun stuff. And then we'll be kind of nearing the end here. Okay, so again, just making sure that it's nice and centered, nice and aligned. Hold that in place. Let that set. Make sure you're not obstructing any of the holes for where the light's going to pop through. And this pattern paper on the cardstock is drying very quickly, which is nice. I don't have to worry about it really pulling apart. And it helps to, spread the glue out thin and not use too much. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there for like 5 minutes waiting for it to set, and then that's where you run into problems. So just easy on the glue. Okay. I got a little bit there. It seemed to happen almost every single time. And voila. Get it right down to the bottom. And just give it a quick little press. There we go. And panels are done. Okay, now we can go around and finish it off with all the little details here. We'll do that here in a second. There's our front, looking awesome. Okay. Now, if for some reason you have a little gap there, you can always go in and paint a little bit of glue onto that little area there, and that's going to be a disaster. Let me grab another piece of scrap paper here. It really helps to use some clean scrap paper every once in a while when you're doing this sort of painting method. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on there, and let's see, where was that? There it was. I'm just going to stick it in there, rub that glue right on top there. Okay, and then you can reach in from the inside and kind of squeeze that shut so that it really kind of stays nice and flush. But overall, everything is coming out just as planned, which is nice. And give that a few seconds to set. It's going to be a very sturdy piece too. This is one of those that you can definitely store, and it should maintain its integrity for years to come. Okay, so now that we've got that, the next thing we're going to do is apply some of the little overlays for the decorative pieces, like this little window here. Okay, so we'll start on the front and work our way around. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on this little window here. You don't want to overdo it. Don't need to overdo it. Just a little bit goes a long way. It's a pretty small piece. Okay. Let me grab it and just place it right in its spot here. And it's a curved surface, so you are going to have to kind of apply pressure all around to get it to really stick, which is fine. It's very simple. There we go. You can see how that looks. That looks nice. Now, it's really starting to come together here. Next little piece here is our little door. Now this is kind of a larger piece. And this part here, this is going to be flush with the bottom. Okay, and it's going to overlay the door itself like so. So we want to just get that nice and centered. So let's get our glue on the back of this piece. Now this is a thinner cardstock. Let me get my glue bottle cleaned off a little bit here. So it's going to kind of wrap a lot easier. It's not going to resist as much. We do want to be very gentle with the amount of glue that we put on this, though. We don't want to warp the paper. Okay, so just go easy on the glue here, but make sure that you get it covered nicely all over in the center here too. And then most importantly, let's get some glue down at the bottom here and just kind of spread that nice and thin so it goes down all the way to the bottom. We want a nice clean seam at the bottom. And kind of start like that and just pop that into position right there and right there. And just a slight adjustment there, perfect. And there we go. And just press that into place. Beautiful, look at that. That is really starting to come together now, fun. Okay, there's a black portion for the door that's going to go right here. So we got to get that glued down. And again, make sure that you're getting that glue out to the bottoms here so that the bottom is nice and seamless and flush all the way around like that. And it does kind of help to keep this thing on its side so it's not moving around while you're gluing. There we go. Beautiful. There we go. Okay, so the front's done. This is going to look awesome. Yeah, see, again, the beauty of this piece is the structure is just that, the structure. If you kind of take a look at, well, like a house, when you're building a house, the drywall and the insulation and all the wiring and all that stuff is hidden behind a beautifully painted drywall. So that's kind of what we're doing here, and you can see just how beautiful and flawless this is beginning to look once we get all those really nice pieces in place. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is work on the next side here. We've got this little piece here that's going to get glued down like so, and that's for the bottom. All the pieces, or every side has a bottom piece like that, I believe, except for, oh, there goes my pearl, except for the back, which is fine. All right, so let's get our glue on this next piece here. And now on this one here, we also want to make sure that we get good coverage on the very edges here so the edges don't come peeling off. So the bottoms and the edges, let's make sure that we do a good job getting coverage on that, like that, and pop that in place. Make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom and that it butts up as close as you can to the neighboring little grass piece. Okay, and just push that down into place. Give it a good little squeeze here at the bottom and on the edge. Make sure you have good contact. Okay, and again, with this one here, this one's got, you know, some of these grass pieces are different shapes. The ones that are closest to the door have the longer little flourish there. Okay, so that's a good way to kind of identify what's what. All right, now, and I've already actually glued one of these together. Actually, I might have done both of them. Did I do both of them? Oh, no, I didn't. Okay, we've got this little window here with the shutters, and there's a black piece that you need to glue on to the brown piece. Okay, and there's going to be a little bit of brown showing at the bottom, so just make sure that you don't glue this down too far. Just want to match that middle piece up. That should align perfectly, like so. Take a look on the other side, make sure that looks right, and it does. Give it a good squeeze. Okay, and you're not gluing the shutters down. We're going to leave those kind of open. And it may be difficult to glue this down. I'd actually leave that kind of hanging off. It kind of gives it a little more dimension. So what we want to do is just put glue on this window part itself and maybe leave the little window sill alone and let that kind of drape off or hang off a little bit. Kind of adds a nice little shadow there. So just put that right over the window and just hold that in place while it sets. it may help to kind of hold it like this and use the entire surface of a couple of your fingers to apply that pressure. And there we go. Awesome. There we go. Look how cool that looks. That is really starting to come together here. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so we can move on to the other side here. And now find the little grass piece with the longer flourish that's going over to the right. And we're going to get that glued into place. And really all that's left to do at this point, after we get all these little details installed, is work on our roof, which should go pretty quick too. Okay, so again, just working that glue out to the edges. Had a little excess come out there. And get that nice and butted up against the bottom as well as to the side there next to the door so that there's a continuity there. And nice and flush, and then just pop that right up against the surface like so. There we go. And same thing with our little window here. Just get your glue. Actually, it might help to kind of train this a little bit so it's not so stiff. And then bring the windows in while you train it. Just ever so slightly. Give it a little bit of a curve so that it hugs that surface a little more easily. Okay. Just line that up with that little section in the center there. Get it nice and centered. And again, I'm just using 2 fingers to apply the pressure there. There we go. And actually, I might need to put a little bit more glue on that. I didn't get enough there on the bottom. Let me grab a scrap piece of paper. Just throw a little glue on the underside of that and just kind of paint it in that area there. There we go. And just hold that down for a few extra seconds while it sets. Okay. Yeah, because we're working with flat pieces on a curved surface, so you do have to do a little bit of training, and if you don't do the training, just be a little bit more patient while you wait for it to dry. But it will work, and it's going to look awesome. I love the little shutters on there. That looks really cute. Okay, so that leaves this side here is going to take a little bit of grass. Okay, so let me see here. We're going here. This grass is, you're going to do the one that has the 2 going to the left on this piece here. So let's get our glue on this little piece here. And again, focus on the bottom and the sides. Make sure you get good coverage on everything. And make sure it's nice and flush with the bottom, and then that it butts up against this neighboring piece here so that there's like a continuity there. And you're going to see a little bit of orange, and that's fine. Again, remember that 5% error rate that we talked about. But that looks pretty darn awesome. Okay, let's go back to this side here, and let's throw our last little bit of grass down. And then we just have one little window for the back. There's no grass in the back. Just like that. Nice and flush with the bottom. Get it to butt up against the side there. And then just push down these little flourishes. And there we go. right, and then our back just has the little window on it, this guy here. So I can kind of bend them a little bit to train them and get our glue on the window. And pop that into place, like so. There we go. All right. Well, guys, that is looking pretty sharp here. You can see what it's going to look like when it's on its cute little base. Okay, and that just leaves our roof. And then when we're done with the roof, we're going to put the little cap on top there to finish it off. But let's get our roof in place here. That looks awesome. Okay, so our roof panels, I should say, these are the roof panels. I've gone ahead and I've trained some of these, and I actually kept this on purpose to show you something. But first off, take a dowel and just give it a light train like that. Now you can tell the difference here. You can see the wood grain texture on this, and then you can see the wood grain texture on this. You can see the difference here is that I actually ran my wood grain embossing folder through a Cuttlebug, which gives a lot of pressure, and it cracked the paper because it's a white core. It's actually a white background too. I did the same embossing folder, but I used my Sizzix embossing boutique. Here, I'll pull it out so I can show you. And I left out one of the little plastic inserts. I used this thing, and I was able to get that piece, even though it was a white core, to emboss without damaging it. Okay, so I'm not overly concerned about it. I think it looks kind of cool, actually. But what we're gonna do is, and let me train this one too. Just give it a little, just train it just a little bit. We're gonna put our vellum on these, and then we're going to apply them onto our roof here. You can see how that's gonna work, just like that. And that's gonna finish it off beautifully. But gotta get our vellum on first. So let's flip these all over. And as you've probably guessed, and I think I've already mentioned this, there's a few that have a little moon. You wanna make sure that you glue this down and that you're not obstructing the little moon there, because the moon, in our case, is a green vellum. In your case, it may be a different color. Or if you don't want to do that, you could technically just cut out a few more of these and just, make it all one color. But either way, I'm going to begin by just doing some dots, I think. I'm just going to do dots all the way around here. And maybe a few little streaks here or there. Okay, let me find one with the dots. And I'm kind of just focusing my gaze on making sure that I don't obstruct the moon and that I get it nice and centered, because I know that if I do that, everything else will fall into place nicely. Okay, so there is that final piece there. And now I'm going to do the same thing here with the moon. I'm just going to do some dots around the perimeter. I think that's all you really need. You don't need a lot for it to stick. Vellum is very lightweight and it just holds nicely. Okay, give it a press. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to do one at a time here. We're going to glue this right on to our roof, making sure that we're not obstructing the little cutouts that are on here, so that it allows the light to come through. So what we want to do, and I'll do a couple, and then kind of just turn you loose and let you finish the job. And we'll, actually, you know what we could do? We could probably do it the same way we did, this one, I think we can just put glue on the entire thing here, and it'll be fine. So get your glue, make sure you get it out to the perimeter here, and then maybe a few little dots here and there. Don't put glue in the areas where you have the cutouts, because then the glue will kind of tarnish it a little bit. And if necessary, you may need to kind of lift this thing up and move it around so that you can actually see where the light is kind of, poking through those little cutouts so that you're not obstructing any of the areas. But more or less, you just want to make sure that it's centered and you have a nice border going all the way around this little roof piece. Okay, so the first little panel here is on. I'm going to go on to this section here. Now, some of these sections are a little different, so make sure that you're grabbing the right one. Okay, like this one here. And this one here is just going to be one solid piece of vellum. There's no moon, so we can just literally just take and drop a few dots here. And actually, I was thinking about it. I think we may be able to, as far as the gluing of the roof panels, may be able to get away with just gluing the top and the bottom like we did with the actual bottom of the structure as far as the vellum goes. And I think the most important thing is just to make sure that you have enough glue on the top and the bottom, and then the rest of it should just kind of stay in place. So you know what, I'm going to just give that a try. I'm going to put glue on top, and then of course this part down here, you don't want it lifting up, so we're going to make sure we get good coverage on the little scallops here. Okay, just like that, and get that lined up nicely. Hold that in place on top. Ooh boy. Oh man, I've got a glue disaster here. Let me clean that up. Careful with your glue. Get that nice and centered. And just give that a squeeze on the, yeah, you know what, that should do the trick, I think. You could, however, put some glue on the sides as well. So let's get our glue on top. Let's get some glue on the sides. We need those hanging down. And then of course down here on these little scalloped areas, definitely want that. And then maybe just a few little dots here and there along the inside just to kind of keep it anchored down. And just get that nice and in place, nice and centered, and just push that down. Okay, give that a few seconds to set. And I mean, that's really it for the roof. This process is going to be a little repetitive, so maybe we'll go through it one more time and you can finish that off, and then I'll show you how to kind of put the rest of the top in place. It's pretty straightforward, and that looks good. Okay, so again, just to recap, the little pieces with the moon, make sure that you get those aligned correctly and glued down, and then put your moon over it. I guess you could do it the other way around too, it doesn't matter. You could put the moon down first. Get all your vellum in, make sure that these are trained. Okay, so I've got the rest of my roof panels on. Again, just follow the same process. And then really all that's left to do is take your little finial, the top, and just glue that right on to the top. And I'm just going to do that by putting glue on this orange section here. And of course, I'm going to work that glue out to the very perimeter, the very edge there, just to make sure that I get a nice full contact there. Okay. And find what you would consider the best looking front and use that as the front where you have your door. Okay, I'm just gonna do it this way so you can see what I'm doing. Just get it nice and aligned with that area there, and just hold that nice and firm until it's fully set. And then take a look at the final photo of the project. You'll see that I'll be putting a little red pearl at the top, and also a few little red rhinestones here and there just to kind of finish off the piece. But you can see, I'm checking my camera here, what this piece is going to look like. And it's totally Halloween, but it could totally transition into fall. So you can leave it out for a little bit longer and enjoy it. And again, if you want to, you could totally make this with more festive fall colors. Not that these are not fall colors, but they are a little, with the blacks and the oranges, well, the contrast there really lends itself to Halloween more so, which is fine. But again, I think it's a pretty versatile piece, very unique, and it's definitely gonna light up the night. So I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. If you did, please take a moment to visit our YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment, let us know what you loved about the video. And if you do make this or any of the projects in our new Halloween bundle, please take a moment and visit us on Facebook by doing a search for Dreaming Tree Group. We're about 7,500 strong. This is a separate group, not the official page that has about 40,000. This is the 7,500 member group. And come hang out with us. We'll look forward to seeing you there. And as always, I look forward to crafting with you again.
Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.